very good morning to all the viewers on the Facebook Live platforms of Namibia Media Holdings. My name is Denver Kisting. We are coming to you live from the Havana Hotel in the capital, where we'll be hosting the Minister of Finance, Kale Schletwein, after he tabled the midterm budget review in the National Assembly yesterday afternoon. And with me here this morning is Chantal Hasselman from one of our collaborative partners, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Good morning, Chantal.
Good morning, Denver.
How are you feeling this morning after having had to dissect the midterm budget review yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening, I can imagine?
We are equally excited to have another opportunity of looking from a mid-year perspective into where are we heading and what alternative plans need to be made.
Yes, you'll also be the Director of Ceremonies this morning, Chantal. What can we expect from the program?
This morning, we're honoured to have the Minister present, Minister of Finance, Honourable Kale Schletwein. He will be our keynote speaker, and with his address, he will cover highlights from the speech as read yesterday, and also usually include some personal remarks to the conversation. Straight after that, the PwC team is no longer into printing tabloids for handing out. So yes, we're saving trees.
Yes.
So we have an electronic tabloid available that will be a WhatsApp broadcast, and it will also be showcased today here on the screens, and it will also be available on our website, which is a good analytical summary and overview of the main findings per the speech.
We're looking forward to that.
Yes, and we will also conclude, Denver, with a interview or a one-on-one Q&A with the Minister, covering a few grounds, reflecting of what he shares this morning.
Yes, in fact, it gives me great delight to be the host of that session.
Are you ready, Denver?
I'm always ready. Yeah, but thank you and best of luck for your role also.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please stay tuned on all the Facebook Live platforms of Namibia Media Holdings for the midterm budget review breakfast hosted by Namibia Media Holdings, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Standard Bank, and Liberty.
Can I have your attention? Good morning, Honourable Minister of Finance, Kale Schletwein. Good morning, Mr. Justice Mufongwe, Commissioner of Inland Revenue Department. Invited representatives from the Ministry of Finance, from Inland Revenue Department and Customs and Excise. Ms. Monique Klutter, Managing Director of Liberty Life, Mr. Vendumbuavi Mungunda, Managing Director of Standard Bank, Mr. Albi Botha, Managing Director of Namibia Media Holdings. Esteemed guests and clients of PwC Standard Bank Liberty Life, and members of the Namibian business fraternity, members of the media, all protocol observed. So it is my pleasure as tax leader to PwC Namibia, Chantal Hasselman, to be your program facilitator for this morning's event. On the table you would see is the program outlining our proceedings and the order. Few house rules. If you could please have cell phones on silent while we are busy on stage, as well as just outside that door to the left you would find restrooms. And if you've parked in this mall, you would have received a parking ticket, which can be redeemed either at the entrance to the casino or on the -1 floor at reception area. And if needed, the Wi-Fi password is capital letters PwC 2019. At the closing of this event, the Minister's mid-year budget speech will be available on our website, as well as an electronic tabloid or video which we've made on highlights of the budget. And after the Minister's keynote address, it will also be brought a WhatsApp broadcast to the audience who gave permission to that. And please note that Namibia Media Holdings is live streaming the event. So moving along with the program, may we please rise for the singing of the national and AU anthems. Thank you. You may be seated. I would now like to call upon Ms. Monique Klute, MD Liberty Life, for our official opening address.
Director of Proceedings, Honourable Kalish Letvine, the Minister of Finance, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue, Mr. Justice Mofongwe, Captains of Industry, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, good morning. Welcome to the 2019-20 Mid-Year Budget Review. I'm honoured to be here and delivering the welcoming address for this occasion. In today's interconnected world, the impact that one industry's performance can have on another has become even more significant. Our core industries, agriculture and mining, have faced immense challenges over the years, and this has resulted in cross-industry sluggish performance and an economic recession that has been felt by all. As a result, leaders are adjusting their approach in viewing the economy and its actors and industries as intertwined rather than in silos. For instance, the recent drought has had a significant negative impact on not only the agricultural sector, but in all other sectors as well. The drought that we still face can no longer just be regarded as a natural rife that only affects our colleagues in the agricultural sector, but has proven, as we discussed this morning at our table, to spill over into other sectors, critically paralyze our economy in very destructive ways. Although we faced an economic recession for approximately 3 years and continue to feel the economic woes since having registered a contraction of 2.9% and 2.6% respectively in our GDP growth for Q1 and Q2 2019, the IMF, in a recent article, was very optimistic about the improvement in Namibia's economy. And although we as a nation have many accolades, the high levels of inequality and unemployment still tarnish our country's name. The IMF noted in their country report on Namibia that they were optimistic about a recovery in the economy, but they were still concerned about increased levels of public debt and the elevated financing needs for growth. I, for one, am keen, as I'm sure everyone in the room is this morning as well, to hear about government's plans to address these matters so that Namibia as a nation can achieve what Bank of Namibia has predicted, that we will grow our GDP by 0.8% and 1.2% in 2020 and 2022 respectively. Thank you very much for sharing this morning with us. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we trust that you will enjoy your time here and gain value. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Maybe also at this forum to welcome Monique, your first event in the seat of MD to Liberty Life, to this tri-party sponsoring event. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our keynote address. I would like to invite the Honourable Minister of Finance to stage.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I hope you all had a nice, good rest, full of optimism. Well, first of all, let me recognize Madame Hasselmann from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Mungunda from Standard Bank, Madame Klute from Liberty, and Alvi from Media Holdings. Thank you very much for organizing this event again. I believe that we maintain a tradition that has been standing for long, where we share the impressions of whether it's a budget speech or a mid-year budget review, which we believe is absolutely important and crucial to hear what the response is, to continue with the consultative process, and I appreciate it very much that this is happening. Yesterday I had the honor to present the 29-20 mid-year budget review to the National Assembly, and I'm thankful that you are making the speech available and also comment on it. This is the fifth such event since we introduced it in 2015. The occasions provide the government with the opportunity to inform the Namibian public of our progress in meeting our macroeconomic policies, as well as providing an update on the current and projected economic situation in the country, but also in the region and in the world. We all recognize that these past few years have not been easy in terms of economic well-being of Namibia. However, we remain committed to a continued policy of fiscal consolidation, maintaining fiscal sustainability, doing what is necessary to encourage economic recovery, economic growth, job creation, and reducing the stubbornly high level of income inequality in Namibia. However, it is unrealistic to expect that the government alone can help Namibia emerge from its current economic situation. And that is why these occasions are so important, to see how we can do better together. We have come from a culture where, in times of trouble, the default position has been to look to the government for solutions. And of course, we take our responsibility in providing these solutions, but solutions developed together are most of the time, or almost always, the better solutions. This culture has come to an end and has to change. We would encourage mutual beneficial partnerships between government and the private sector to build a better Namibia for all. We need your support in these testing times, and we need together address these challenges. Our economic summit not so long ago was one of those efforts that we have taken into consideration to work together better. The bottom line is that in fiscal and economic terms, we are at a crossroads. If we stay on the path of fiscal consolidation whilst protecting the public investment in socio-economic activities, then we will ultimately see the benefits. However, if we are not disciplined and consistent in our policy stance, then I'm afraid to say we risk losing out on the gains that we have made so far. Ladies and gentlemen, time is not on our side, and I would urge all of you to help the government to reboot the economy and do this in a spirit of openness and frankness. We need to listen to all Namibians, as the solutions are not solely the prerogative of Namibian government's policy makers. I do not intend to reiterate the content of yesterday's speech. I will leave it to others to produce their independent analysis of what is being proposed. However, I would make it a point that we have, I believe, balanced fiscal prudence whilst ensuring that our policy priorities in areas such as public health, public education, poverty alleviation remain protected. I want to be frank with you today. We are facing serious challenges in mobilizing financial resources needed to maintain adequate quality public services for our people. We have no space left for increased borrowing. Due to depressed domestic market, we have limited potential to increase domestic revenues, so additional taxes are not an option. And with continued uncertainty over the economic situation in South Africa, we can expect SACU revenues to be volatile over the short and medium term. So we are in a situation where additional expenditure is difficult because of no fiscal space for borrowing, no large possibilities to increase taxes in a downturning economy. So we have to find alternatives to provide the necessary liquidity in the market that would stimulate the economy. In this setting, we have to learn to do more with less. We must seek opportunities for efficiencies in the way we allocate and spend public monies. Key to this is allocative efficiency, which simply means that we use public funds to create maximum impact in terms of service delivery, encouraging economic growth and maintaining stability, peace, prosperity for all. The current drought has added an unwanted and unwelcome negative condition. However, the Namibian economy will never grow in an inclusive and sustainable manner through agriculture alone. Real and sustainable growth will only happen if we embrace and meet the challenges presented by new technologies and innovation, including disruptive innovation. We believe that a diversified economy is the best bet we can put our money on. We believe that integration, economic integration into the continent, into the region, offers opportunities for economic growth. And to be able to take these opportunities, it is not only one sector that can provide that. Agriculture will be an important sector, but manufacturing will be a probably more important sector the services sectors like tourism, education, health, logistics, transport offer good opportunities if we manage to integrate and diversify. I would like to give you an example of disruptive innovation, which we have to embrace. You will all have heard about the Amazon company. 20 years ago, the idea that you could order online and have delivered to your doorsteps all manners of goods would have seemed like fantasy. Well, fantasy has become today's reality with consequent impacts on traditional shopping habits. I'm using this example because retail and wholesale has been and is still a very important subsector in the tertiary sector, has been on the decline since a couple of years. These online shopping methods will come to our doorstep as well. So there is disruptive innovation that we have to embrace. However, the situation is not all doom and gloom. Despite unfavorable global, regional, and domestic economic downturns, we have managed to narrow the budget deficit from 8.1% of GDP to about 4.1% this year. We have aligned expenditure to revenue, which means that expenditure must not grow faster than revenue. We have settled the steep growth in public debt at 11.2% annually, far below the averages of 30.1% during the excess volatility in income 3 years ago. We have ring-fenced expenditure on social sectors, and social safety nets were strengthened to guard against significant reversals and enable continuous provision in essential services. The statistics show that our intervention in creating and strengthening social safety networks has reduced absolute poverty to 7% and real poverty to below 20%. And that during times when the economy was not growing at all. So we believe that that is an achievement that needs to be maintained. We should not allow to lose these gains in poverty reduction that we have achieved. Seeing recessionary pressures in the sector of wholesale and retail, trade, construction, public education, and health have indeed eased. So we see that some positives are coming through, albeit slowly. International reserves in terms of import cover have improved to above 4-month import equivalent, relatively to the international benchmark of 3 months. Additionally, the 2019 Global Competitive Report of the World Economic Forum further confirms early gains for Namibia, indicating that macroeconomic stability has improved thanks to difficult but firm actions taken during the past 3 years. And our rankings on business and financial systems efficiency as well as ICT innovation have also improved. We are very happy, and I especially as the Minister of Finance, that our financial services sector is ranked very high and has in fact improved in the rankings of the World Economic Forum. That was confirmed through an FSUP study of the World Bank and the IMF, where our financial services sector passed all the tests. And I think we can be proud of that. It's a pillar of financial stability that we need to maintain and protect. I will repeat something I said yesterday that I believe is core to all of us contributing to economic well-being in our country. And that is that Namibia still has significant discrepancies between the haves and the have-nots. To extricate ourselves from this current economic situation of inequality will require the haves to take a share of the collective responsibility we all have for the good of all our people. Those with broad shoulders must bear the weight of those in our society who have been left out. And this effort should not be seen as an effort to make the rich poorer. No, It is an effort where we call upon those with ability to create opportunities for those that have no opportunities for now and bring them closer to what can be called a decent life. I'm pleased to inform you that despite 4 years of consistent fiscal consolidation, we have managed to identify during the mid-year budget review further, we call them savings, but they are not savings, they are just monies that can be better used as anticipated before, of about 1.8 billion. This amount comprises of 176.32 million from operational budget on personnel expenditure and 999.59 million from the development budget. I do believe it is maybe a small achievement, but it is a significant achievement that we start to see that if we cut the wage bill, if we address wage bill problems that we all know, the benefits will be coming quickly and significantly. Only by freezing positions and not increasing salaries, we could realize a saving within half a year of 176 million, which is something, which points us in the direction that the wage bill review needs to be continued in all earnesty. This amount will be reallocated to social, economic, and strategically important priorities, and I can quickly list them. The Ministry of Agriculture, Water, Forestry, for personnel expenditure, utilities, and dryland crop production. The drought relief program under the Office of the Prime Minister. The orphans and vulnerable children programs under the Ministry of Gender Equality, Child Welfare, to cater for expanded coverage. The Ministry of Home Affairs and Immigration for visa stickers. The Ministry of Education, Carsten Alscher, for recruitment of teachers, textbooks, and school feeding program. Health and Social Services for pharmaceuticals and clinical supplies, as well as recruitment of health professionals. The Ministry of Poverty Eradication for social welfare and social grants. To conclude, the economic fiscal environment has changed and remains dynamic. Our economy, small as it is, remains resilient in challenging time. Current, the medium-term economic growth are still projected to be positive, thereby establishing a coherent and sound basis for recalibration of fiscal policy. I think these pages. This mid-year budget review proposes a fundamental but balanced alignment of the government fiscal operation to the new macroeconomic and fiscal framework. The consolidation framework has the objective of placing our public finances on a sound, prudent, and sustainable path. It is a balanced consolidation adjustment with a supportive policy package to enhance efficiencies and quality of spending and cushion the adverse impact of expenditure cuts on growth and service delivery. We believe that inasmuch as consolidation is the backbone of the recovery fiscal policy stance, we have to recognize that by losing growth, it causes pain which needs to be mitigated. And that's why we have proposed in this balanced way a milder consolidation process where we still live with deficits. That means that we live with deficits we have to live with deficits for longer, but smaller deficits. And with that, we improve our ability to stimulate the economy instead of concentrating only on debt and deficit. Achieving shared goals and fiscal sustainability is a collective responsibility. At this juncture, we can make it or break it. Retaining fiscal sovereignty is not a matter of choice. We have collectively chosen to build the Namibian house together, and we have chosen, therefore, to make it. We are reasserting our time-tested national commitment that sustainability is at the core of our fiscal policy, and sustainable development outcomes, which is obtained from resilient policy frameworks. This is the policy course of action which we have acceded to when we set out long-term aspirations of Vision 2030. This is what we aim to achieve as we pull together to achieve the goals of the Harare Prosperity Plan, and this is what we want to aspire to achieve in the envisaged 5th National Development Plan, or the 6th plan that comes as from next year. On the revenue side, I have indicated that in a downturning economy, it is bad policy to improve or increase general taxes. So we have taken the constitution not to do that. We will, however, proceed with some amendments of the tax legislation, and they include, amongst others, they are listed in the speech full. We do want to go ahead with taxing trusts, especially trading trusts. We need to go ahead with plugging holes on transfer pricing and profit shifting through disclosure provisions in the Income Tax Act. We need to look at some VAT zero rating that do not actually help, but can be reintroduced, like the sugar VAT will be reintroduced at 15%. We will have to look at the incentive package in the Income Tax Act for manufacturers and EPZ statuses, where we believe that these incentives actually did not meet the target. They can be withdrawn and the monies can be utilized rather to assist startups and SME support. We have not proceeded with the provision that we had proposed, and that is to make royalties in mining exercises not deductible, because we, after consultations, were convinced that that provision would have negative impact on exploration and therefore an expansion in the mining sector, so we have withdrawn that for now. We have not proceeded with a shift in general taxes, that is to give relief at the bottom and offload that relief onto the top, because we believe that that is not the right time to do that. But we have committed to do some research on the impact of a more progressive taxing system after all. We need to look into a softer tax, a lower tax rate for SMEs and startups. So we need to research how we can implement that. And we invite you to partake in these researches with us. We have looked at VAT for asset managers. We had looked at dividend tax, but the consultations are not yet concluded. So in the next round, they will not be featuring, but we will keep them on our books and see how we will progress with them. That is all an effort to make sure that on the revenue side, we do not fall behind too much, but that we also do not, what people say, tax growth to death. We must allow growth to happen, and we must draw back on tax policy to be more accommodative. And we invite you to assist us in that research effort so that we have a package that we can live together with. So taxes is an important thing. There are other aspects in taxes that we are following now, and yesterday I also tabled 3 international agreements through which we want to have a better access of information, better cooperation with other tax authorities, and better impact on tax measures against transfer pricing, profit shifting, and the like. We believe that with the assistance of the OECD, through these agreements, we will be able to curb that scourge of illicit outflows. And it's interesting to note that of the total illicit outflows on the African continent, about 65% are tax evasions or avoidance. So the bulk of illicit outflows are in fact taxes, not smuggling or money laundering or whatever. It is taxes, and we are a small open economy with many multinationals playing and being operating in our economy, which is important, but we need to be sharpening our pencils to see that what is due here should be paid instead of shifted outside. So, tax policy is one aspect, but tax administration is the other. And I must admit that our tax administration had its weaknesses exposed, especially in the last couple of years, with VAT refunds coming late, with assessments coming late, with inaccurate assessments and so on. We need to improve that, and our way ahead is to create a tax authority through which we can improve our capacities to address these weaknesses that we were exposing to. The deadline for the NAMRA authority, or the Namibian Tax Authority, to come online is now end of March, or the 1st of March. The act is passed. It is not yet in force. The reason for that is, of course, that we cannot disrupt tax collections, and the power to collect taxes is with the Commissioner of Inland Revenue. Mr. Mafongo is a very powerful man. He does that, but we can't relieve him of his duties and powers without having an operational institution fully in place. And that is what we are busy doing in the next 6 months. We hope to have the staffing sorted out, we have the accommodation sorted out, and then we can put the act into force. That will be happening on the 1st of March. And with that, we hope that many of the tax administrative issues are starting to be addressed. Secondly, I can inform that we, through ITAS, have created a platform for e-filing. The registration is proceeding. It is still having some hiccups and it is slow, but we will come with an incentive package to encourage taxpayers to join the ITAS, and we will announce the measures next week once we have concluded all the approvals that are necessary to implement this tax incentive system. Now, finally, ladies and gentlemen, I would be disingenuous if I promised you quick fixes on the current situation. Yes, we continue to mitigate as best as we can the social economic impact of an economic afflicted by recessionary pressures. However, none of us should be in any doubt that the path to economic recovery and sustainability will be fraught with many challenges and obstacles. The task for all of us is to recognize and address these as they emerge, not wait until the pain becomes unbearable before we act. I'm accused of being over-optimistic, but if I'm not optimistic, I should leave my office. So, and with that positive note, I thank you for listening and enjoying.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, for that address. very good overview and summary. If you've also read the speech as read yesterday, listening to the Minister this morning again, outlining our challenges, Honourable Minister, but also challenging the public and the private sector on, in your own words, how to do more with less. And on the tax policy front, giving us the good and the not so good. Looking forward to potential tax incentive package. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're still having sugar in your tea or coffee, maybe now is the time to stop on a lighter note. Running some figures on an analysis of the speech as read, we will now have that played, but maybe because it's a visual, it's more of a teaser, much easier to read when it's being sent to you on your phone or when you get it from our website, specifically the PDF version. And as usual, NMH will have hard or printed media coverage on analysis of the budget for the rest of the week. So could we have our video? Would be the end. I would wish to thank Mr. Jacques van Zyl and PwC team for the visual. I call upon senior journalist Mr. Denver Kisting from NMH. Denver will have the honors of a one-on-one Q&A with Honourable Minister of Finance. I also call upon the Honourable Minister to join us on stage. And during the Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, there will be an open floor. There will be 2 roaming mics. So whenever Denver opens the floor with the raise of your hand, if you can indicate your question, we need not have 1 question per person, but 1 question per time. So thank you.
Yeah.
You can hear a pin drop in the room. To those viewers on the Facebook Live platforms of Namibia Media Holdings, just tuning in, welcome to you and good morning. We're coming to you live from the Avani Hotel in the capital, and we have the distinct honor, together with our collaborative partners, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Standard Bank, and Liberty, to host the Minister of Finance, Kailash Lettwine, after having tabled the midterm budget review in the National Assembly yesterday afternoon. Good morning, Herr Lettwine.
Good morning.
Wie geht's Ihnen?
Sehr gut, okay.
Mir geht's auch sehr gut, danke.
Das freut mich.
Yes. I need to, for the record, state for our audience at home or at the office, wherever they access our Facebook Live platforms, and perhaps also for our audience in the room this morning who might not be privy to this information. What I respect about you is that you don't demand to see questions that I have in my possession in advance. That makes you a very brave man.
Well, you know, brevity and intelligence has a correlation, so...
Yes, yes. But I think that's a well-deserved round of applause. So let's please get straight into it. Before we get into the particulars of number crunching, I want us to speak and engage in layman's terms so that every person, every man, every woman understand exactly what's happening. We live in an era where social media and social media activists have no qualms with behaving recklessly, and they call us out day and night. So, Namibians, or the average Namibian, might be a very worried person, and they don't know whether they should start making plans for Christmas because they hear on social media that the country might be broke. Is that also your stance?
No, not at all. Well, first of all, social media, yes, I think it is in fact, great opportunity where everyone who previously did not have a chance to say what they want to say has now an opportunity to do that. Now, if your choice is to do that recklessly, that's still your choice. And I think sooner rather than later, a legal framework will catch up with those that are irresponsible in their utterings on social media.
Is that a barely concealed warning, which is a cautionary note?
Well, I think it is only responsible to treat a public utterance on social media in the same way than that utterance would have been in the print media. And I think that is the direction we are going to. But what I also want to say is that that does not make me personally fearful to engage on social media, to hear the one or the other with a reckless or an uncalled for comment. I think it is to be used in a responsible way, and it's good to engage and make opinions public through social media. It's an opportunity that has to be taken serious. But as to the notion that Namibia is broke and that we will fail and all that, I think the evidence is, in fact, very clearly showing that that is not the case. We have improved macroeconomic stability. That is recognized not only by ourselves in our statements, but by international watchdogs like the IMF, like the World Economic Forum. So we are moving into a situation where we are, to use the term, less broke or further away from brokenness if our macroeconomic stability is improving.
Well, let's get to the particulars of that. One of the analysts, my colleague Jamari Daddy, spoke to yesterday afternoon after you tabled the midterm budget review in the National Assembly was Eloise du Plessis, the PSG Namibia research head. And she was of the opinion that what she witnessed yesterday afternoon, as you were tabling the midterm budget, was an exercise in cognitive dissonance. Now, that's a very serious statement. And she based that on money being taken from the capital budget directed towards operational expenditure. So we believe that by investing in the capital budget, growth will emanate from it, yet this money is being used for expenses, and operational expenses for that matter.
Yes, that is true in theory. But I think that statement was maybe made with not having all the factual evidence or figures on the table. Our stance is, first of all, is less than $1 billion. So it's not a very significant amount in the whole that has been diverted from the capital budget to operational expenditure. And we must also realize that we have, at the same time, now 4 billion from the African Development Bank in capital expenditure added to the capital budget. So the net is actually an increase of 3 billion instead of a decrease of 1 billion.
I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. You're saying the cut of about $1 billion of the capital budget is not a significant amount. We just want the average Namibian to breathe
Well,
through that.
you are not allowing me to finish.
Very well. Please finish.
I'm saying it is not significant because if we would have left it in the capital budget, it would not have been spent. So to spend it for service delivery or for social safety networks or for securing an election is better than returning it in the next year to the receiver of revenue.
I'm happy you're touching on
And
that.
I think that is our stance. If we have of 8 billion, 1 billion that is showing by evidence that it cannot be spent because of delays in the projects, we must make sure that it is spent where it is needed. That's the quintessence of a mid-year budget review, that you align your resource allocation and spend it where it is most needed. So to fall back and say, well, you know, it's a bad move is I think, therefore not really true. And as I said, at the same time, we have added 4 billion project funding from the African Development Bank into the capital budget. So the net effect is an increase of 3 billion.
Very well, Honourable Minister. I wish we had an entire week to sit here and deliberate these issues. But I'm glad you touched on the fact that had that money not been channeled to the operational budget, it would not have been spent. We need to use the money in the capital budget to build schools, to build hospitals, to build police stations. Why are we not spending the money for those purposes?
I believe that everyone who has managed large projects or even small projects is aware that some projects hit hiccups where the implementation of that project is delayed. In our case, there are many possibilities of hiccups. And I must also say, we are not in an accrued budget where you can hide those hiccups by accruing income and expenditure into the next year and showing that the project is online. We are in a cash-based accounting system. So that means what you have budgeted for this year must be spent. If it is not spent, it is lost and must be rebudgeted in the next year. So in an accrued, you have flexibility, you have the funds available over longer periods of time. So the argument that it is not spent for these capital projects is also questionable. It is spent at the end of the day. It is just our accounting system that says in this year we cannot spend it for this purpose, so we have to realign it. And that's why we have a mid-year budget review. So it will be spent for capital budget.
Very
and
well.
I can also agree with the principle of the argument that capital expenditure obviously stimulates the economy better in certain extent. But operational expenditure is in itself also a stimulation of the economy because it is consumption that is stimulated more through the operational budget than anything else. And that is where we have the pressure at the moment. So the arguments are many, and maybe you are right, we need a week.
Very well. Speaking of hiccups, I'm going to have a swig of water to prevent my hiccups. You know, you encouraged us to speak frankly, and that's exactly why we're here. So I'd also like us to gradually move towards the big white elephants in the room. No holy cows will be left in this room when we are done, although we don't have the week that we're talking about. Now, one very big white elephant goes by the name of Air Namibia, our national airline. We heard no mention of in Namibia and its future, its possible liquidation, how much that's going to cost us. In that very midterm budget review speech which you made in the National Assembly yesterday afternoon?
What's the question?
I would like to know. Fair enough, fair enough. I would like to know, what is the future of Air Namibia? And what are the financial implications of that projected future of the national airline?
Right. Air Namibia, yes, it is a topic that is very hot at the moment. Now, but let me explain why I have not put it into the budget review. First of all, the reason is that we have not made money available to bail it out. That is the first reason. So there was no reason to mention it. Therefore, if you look at Air Namibia, we have to realize that for the last 29 years, there was not a single year where Air Namibia contributed anything to the state coffers. It was always in a subsidized situation.
Could you please repeat that very important sentence, Honourable Minister?
It has never made money.
Thank you.
And the drain on coffers has become worse. And that in spite of 2 consecutive turnaround strategies that were aimed at improving it and bringing it back to commercial sustainability. So we are now at a point where we have to crucially sit and think, do we really believe that Air Namibia as a national airline, in its current form, will spend the money that the treasurer gives it? Will that money be utilized best? Or are there alternatives of that money to be used elsewhere that would achieve our objectives better? To put differently, if we put in what they have asked us to put in, that is 2 billion this year, is that the best way to spend money to create jobs? To change inequality? To bring about youth employment? Is that the best way to do it? And the answer is obviously no. The 2 billion that we give to Air Namibia now will not create a single job. It will just pay debt and perpetuate a situation that is unsustainable. Because if we give 2 billion this year, the same question will be coming to Treasury next year. Another 2 billion, and maybe another 3 billion.
Creating a dangerous precedent.
So we have to ask ourselves the question, is it an going concern that is viable and sustainable, or should we change it and make it a enterprise that is working for the economy? Secondly, I think the environment has changed. We have acceded to the open sky policy. We have acceded to a number of protocols that now oblige us to invite other airlines and allow them to fly into Namibia without hindrance. As a very small operator, it makes Air Namibia, on the one hand, less viable. Competition is very strong. But for the economy, it's a great opportunity. Now, all of a sudden, we are much better connected through other airlines visiting Windhoek than being dependent on our own all the time. So we believe that we have to look whether the better opportunity to create economic opportunity lies in better managing airports rather than creating airlines.
Very well.
And I think that is where we have to discuss the matter, and that's why we are still in that process. We have not taken a decision yet, but what I can say is we we do not want to create uncertainty with these arguments. We will look after the people that are there. We will not create insecurity and disruption of services. I think we just have very serious questions on our hands that have very significant financial implications, and they need to be considered in a way where everyone is on board and aware of what the consequences are.
Thank you. I think I may have heard a bit of an applause in the audience, but they might be shy. You may applaud if you want to, if you agree with the stance. I hear you say that the reason why you didn't mention it in the midterm budget review yesterday was because there is no bailout. Well, should the national airline be liquidated, we will need money. So, question mark.
Maybe I'll chicken out, but I think that question, if it comes to that, should be asked to the liquidator, who gets what.
Very well. No, I respect that, and I understand that I'm also here to hold space for you. But just on that note, one unfair question that I'm also owning that it's unfair. If you were not the Minister of Finance and you were the Namibia CEO, what would you do on this very morning, the 23rd of October, 2019?
Well, I have never applied for the job.
Yes, but this is a hypothesis that I'm taking charge of.
I have a much more difficult job, I think, than the CEO of Air Namibia. So leave me with my job, and I leave him with his or her job. I think the CEO of Air Namibia is fully aware of what is going on, is fully incorporated in the discussions that we have. So I have no reason to believe that that person is more fearful now after my statement here than he was before, because he knew and he knows what the situation is.
Although we know that it's been a challenge also to get a substantive CEO for a long time in that position, but we'll get to that on another platform. So, you touched on the commercial viability of an SOE like in Namibia. We do know that not all SOEs were formed statutorily to be commercial. Like the other white elephant, and my colleagues are also here in the room, it goes by the name of the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. You have been quoted in the media, and perhaps it's an opportunity for you to tell us whether you've been correctly quoted or not, that there is no money to assist the NBC. Yet, yesterday afternoon, we saw about 54 million channeled, we believe, towards the NBC through the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology. What's your response to this?
Well, we believe that the NBC is an important institution that has a wide variety of functions. It is, of course, having its commercial activities through advertisements and entertainment activities, but it is also an institution that has a social responsibility of sharing information, providing information, and the like. When we said there is no bailout possible, and I was quoted correctly.
Thanks.
Was in a situation where we had appropriated monies to that institution and they had used it up. And they wanted us to, without appropriation, channel more money into that institution. That's when we said there is no money and we can't do that. Now with the mid-year budget review, we have created the ability to do that legally.
So there is money?
There is 54 million that is going to assist the NBC, because of course one has to recognize that the national function of the NBC is not one that one can just ignore. And if resources are needed to do that, we have to provide them. Again, the difficulty is also that we are not so sure at the moment as Treasury whether resources that are availed to NBC are actually utilized for the purpose that they were appropriated for. We do believe that there is a significant amount of spending that can be much leaner without reducing the service that is delivered. We believe that there needs to be some serious restructuring in that organization to be more efficient and effective, to bring about better service delivery to the listeners. And we hope that some stringent financial resource envelopes for the institution will spur them to do exactly that, to look at themselves, see how they can do things better, instead of perpetuating an opulent situation and rely
Thank you.
only on shareholder provisions.
You're touching on opulence. In all fairness to the NBC, and I hope that my positive bias towards the NBC is public knowledge. As much as you say that there needs to be restructuring to make sure that the resources allocated to the NBC are spent in the manner in which they should, it's also an open secret. In fact, it's public knowledge. What open secret am I talking about? That the subsidy to the NBC has been drastically cut, which means they have to make do with a lot less to fulfill their very statutory mandate.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But have they touched their wage bill? Have they looked whether every manager that earns over $1 million is actually delivering for over $1 million a month? Have they looked that their procurement is efficient? Have they bought the equipment for the best price that is available? Have they seen whether the service delivery can be streamlined and improved? We don't see those signs. So if you get less subsidy from your shareholder, I thought that is an indication to you as the SOE to go back and look into your own organization and see how can I do more with less instead of how can I do less with the same or more subsidies. And that is what we need in the NBC.
Yes.
They have to come to the party and not act as if it is business like usual. And look, the salary increments that they have granted themselves over the time when the going was tough. No toughness there. So one must realize that if the going is tough, it is tough for all and not only for some. And that is what the message is. If you could have shown that you embrace the need for doing less or doing more with less, then it's a different approach. But if that is not obvious, then
Thank you.
I think one...
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister, this Wednesday is becoming a very long week, so I want to cut you some slack. Firstly, I'd like to invite you to have a swig of water if you want to. You may.
We are
Yes.
borrowing more for habit, you know. So
Yes. And then, before I open the floor for some questions from the audience, I don't know whether they're going to cut you some slack. The lower tax regime for small businesses is something positive and very encouraging. We do believe that smaller entrepreneurs particularly will benefit from this. But we also understand that a lot more research and some probing investigation is also required around this. Please just briefly touch on that, and then I'll open the floor for some additional questions before we wrap up.
yeah, well, when you look at our tax base, it's very narrow. It's about 12% of the population pay income tax. The rest don't. The second point is that about 37% of the economy is informal. So it's a cash-based economy that lives next to the receiver. No income tax pay comes out of that sector into coffers. While public services are utilized by these entities. And while some of these entities in the informal sector are actually sizable entities, they are not small. Now, the principle of equality in tax obligation comes in. And the question is, why should a teacher with a salary of 15,000 a month pay more tax than an entrepreneur in the informal sector that has an income of 1 million a month? That equality needs to be addressed. That's on the one side. On the other side, one has to recognize that the informal sector, the small and medium-sized enterprises, that's where the startups are, that's where the economy can be stimulated and grown, that's where many jobs are. So we have to find a balance through which we broaden the base, rope those persons, those entities into the tax net, but make the tax obligation not a killing burden. It must be a soft landing for them in the tax net. And that is the approach that we have. We tried with an presumptive tax, where we said everyone with a turnover of X will have a flat tax rate of Y. There are some unfairnesses in that approach. It's an easy to administer system, but not everyone with a turnover of 1 million has the same costs to get that turnover. So there is an unfairness in a presumptive tax issue, and we therefore dropped it for now. We therefore believe there are other models that we can look at, but we want to do some research, and that's what we have to do together with the business community to see how is it that we can broaden the tax base into the informal sector, so that those that use the system, those that use infrastructure or whatever, are paying their dues. But it must be for sure a low and soft learning. And it is not only that. The third component is that small entities in the formal sector should also benefit from a lower tax rate, so that they can grow faster into bigger ones and create more jobs rather than paying tax. So
we won't be ungrateful for a soft landing. We desperately need soft landings, Honourable Minister. Very well. Let's open the floor for some questions. Let them be constructive, but let them be frank. That's the reason why we are here. Don't be shy. Mr. Edgar Brandt from New Era. There will be a mic heading your way just now, Edgar, for your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Denver. Honourable Minister, yesterday you mentioned in your speech, and you mentioned it again this morning, that the haves need to help shoulder the burden of the have-nots. Are you referring to the NEAF policy, or are you referring to something else? Could you please elaborate on that for us?
Shall we take a few more questions, and then we can give Honourable Minister an opportunity to respond to those questions? Any other questions from the floor? Mr. Nelson Lucas from the Blue Bank, our collaborative partner, Standard Bank.
Thank you. Mr. Honourable Minister, thank you for the budget yesterday. So I think my question mainly relates to transfer pricing, something which is quite close to me. I do understand that you mentioned a couple of projects that are on the line in terms of aligning with other tax jurisdictions, in terms of plans that are in place to make things better from a NAMRA perspective, or from a government perspective. So I just wanted to know, what are the actual plans? I mean, can we expect some sort of amendments coming through in terms of Section 95A in the Income Tax Act, which talks to transfer pricing, to align itself a lot more with the new BEPS action plans and the changes that has happened with OECD over the years? Because since 2005, when transfer pricing was enacted, there hasn't been any sort of a lot of developments around it. And then secondly, transfer pricing being a very technical area in tax, do we expect a lot more technical skill upbuilding within the ministry around it as well? And do we expect some audits to come through? Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Would you like to take these two questions, or shall we take another one and then?
I can quickly.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. The first one from the colleague from New Era about the question of inequality and how we address inequality. That's at the heart of it. We have to recognize that our economy is still very skewed. We have large discrepancies between different levels of income, and that needs to be addressed. But as I said, the approach should not be to take from Paul to give to Peter. That is an approach that we believe is not going to give the necessary results. But if Peter is the well-endowed one, we can ask Peter to create an economic opportunity for Paul in which he can grow. So our structural transformation of the economy should be aiming at incentivizing the creation of opportunities, economic opportunities, by private sector entities that have the ability to do so, through making them preferred service providers for government to procure from or to go into business with, or whatever incentive there might be. And that is the principle of the NEAF Act, actually. It is a piece of legislation that does two things. It identifies hitherto disadvantaged groups that should be the recipients of preferential treatment, and it gives an incentive package to those that government is making business with through procurement to say, if you score well on these 7 pillars, which are capacity, ownership, management, gender balance, incorporation of disadvantaged groups, then you are a preferred service provider to the state, and your business is more secured. So that is the principle we want to bring into the field. Now there is, of course, the risk that if we talk about haves and have-nots, that is interpreted as being individuals. That is not. We are not talking about individuals here. We are talking about business entities that have the more ability than others to create jobs, because that's where we need to go. The incentive package that we announced in the mid-year budget review is trying to dislodge private capital to provide some liquidity in the economy that would stimulate growth. So instead of taking that capital outside the country, which is happening at the moment, to a level that becomes unsustainable, we want to create economic opportunity inside the economy, but that economic opportunity must then bring about some of the objectives that we have, and that is job creation, youth employment, and so on. And we need the assistance of those that have the ability to create economic opportunity. It's not only government who can create that economic opportunity, it's investment that creates that opportunity. And we are saying that because if we look at the statistics, domestic investment is on the decline for the last 10 years, in fact. So even through fat years, when growth was close to 6%, domestic investment declined. So we believe that if you are a responsible, or if you are an entity that has those means, consider it to bring opportunities within the country. Standard Bank is one example. They have created an opportunity for their staff to become shareholders in their own bank, and they have financed it. And I think that is the type of trust that an entity with ability shows in the economy, and it created an economic opportunity for their staff by pre-financing that deal. And they are now the owners of albeit small, but of a significant part of a strong entity. And with that, they are themselves stronger. They have a negotiable instrument in their hand. They have got collateral in their hand. Their balance sheet as an individual is much better, and they can participate in the economy.
That's true empowerment. Honourable Minister, I think Mr. Brandt may have to schedule a private session for you. I appreciate how comprehensive you are. But let's also get to the others, please.
Transfer pricing. Well, on BEPS, we are more or less compliant with our legislation, and we have instituted all the amendments that are needed. It is the capacity to implement that is the problem. And when NAMRA comes, we hope that capacity will be much enhanced. You must realize that when you deal with large international corporations, they have the best lawyers, the best accountants, and you have good people, but maybe not as experienced as they are. So capacity in bringing that about is necessary. We try to do that by now joining the OECD. We believe the OECD has that type of capacity to help us to judge an submission by a multinational and see whether that is in fact transfer pricing or not. So through these cooperation agreements, we believe that our capacity can be jacked up quite significantly. And but on the legislative framework, we are there. Can be improved still, but we are more or less there. There is one difficulty now, and those are these double taxation agreements with tax havens. Double taxation agreements are an instrument through which we want to assure that investors don't carry a double tax burden. That is, one in their country of origin and now in Namibia where they are investing. But there are some tax authorities with whom we have double taxation agreements, which have evolved themselves into so-called tax havens. And that is harmful for us because our companies move their holdings into the tax haven and shift profits away from here into a tax authority where very low taxes are paid. And that is, I think, a matter that we have to look at in parallel with transfer pricing and profit shifting motivations.
And Namibia certainly is no tax haven, sir.
No, we were in fact delisted. We were on a blacklist. But if I look at Namibia and all those that are listed as tax havens, the big point is that the real tax havens are missed. They are not on that list. They are escaping it.
Absolutely.
So I think that has been corrected, and we are now not anymore on that list. We had very intense discussions with the European Union, who had put us there, but it is now reversed. And one step that is a beneficial step out of that exercise is now the joining of the OECD actions, those 3 actions through which our capacity will be assisted and improved.
It's all about striking a balance between a white elephant and a blacklist, Honourable Minister. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had for official questions. We've run out of time. This is a networking session, so I'd like to invite members of the audience who still want to engage the Minister on any matter that's very close to their hearts to speak to him while he's still around. But I'd like to thank you for your openness, for your frankness, for showing up on behalf of yourself and the country and the Ministry of Finance. So thank you very much for that.
It's my pleasure. And
Danke, dass Sie gekommen sind.
Gern geschehen.
Yes, for those viewers still tuned in on the Facebook Live platforms of Namibia Media Holdings, we're coming to you live from the Avani Hotel in the capital, where we're dissecting the midterm budget review, which was tabled yesterday in the National Assembly by the Minister of Finance, Kalesh Letwan. We're about to wrap the program up, and our daily Klets Kompas Republicaans flagship breakfast program will also be brought to you live from here. So please stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our Honourable Minister and Denver Kisting also for the candid conversation. Moving along with our program, and what just a remark from myself, not coming up so strong for the question. Q&A session is, I think for me, a positive that came out yesterday is our tax revenue to GDP ratio at 28.8%. If we just look at the South African scenario with the announcement of projected tax revenue not being on track, well, what came out strong is that we've locked in 50% of envisaged tax revenue to be collected, and we did not change to a figure of the projected 58 billion. With the dependency of tax revenue looking at total state revenue, that is an important statement and indicator. Of the 58 billion, only 3 billion is non-tax revenue, indicating our high reliance on the collection of tax revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, last on our program is our vote of thanks. I call upon Mr. Mungunda, the MD of Standard Bank.
Thank you very much, and really a great honor for me on behalf of Standard Bank, behalf of NMH, PwC Liberty, to express a word of thanks. But as I do that, just maybe a few remarks as well. It's always, I'm close to a politician, I suppose. But I must say that the macroeconomic environment in Namibia is extraordinarily uncertain. The core business environment remains unusually volatile. And in these extraordinary times, it is expected that leaders both in government and in business take bold steps and form some judgment of the future of our economy and country to both transform and also grow our economy. And I think in my own environment, I make always a few, there's some words that I always repeat, and it is that without change and without transforming, there's usually no growth. But at the same time, change usually comes with pain. The Honorable Minister referred to sugar and the fact that, you know, we will now start to add VAT on the sugar. And sugar can be quite a big addiction as well, probably not as strong as some others. But you can imagine if your child has been used and has been addicted to sugar, and you are now starting to remove that sugar and take that sugar away. It is going to be quite a few weeks and few days of a lot of difficult conversations. And that's the challenge, I think, that comes with change, is that people are used to certain things. And if you were to start to want to take those things, it is going to be a short-term pain. However, it is, and it's supposed to be for the greater long-term gains and also greater long-term prosperity. And I'm saying these words to maybe just emphasize that in terms of where we are, we will definitely as a country need some time to fundamentally reassess our economic structures, our government's operating model, our spending priorities, the structures and also our policies, both in terms of certainty, but also the enforcement thereof, the Honorable Minister referred to, like on the transfer pricing, the policy is there, but it's probably a stronger reinforcement of that. Will hopefully, for example, add more revenue to what we are getting. So, as I said, change does not come without some kind of short-term pains, but however, hopefully for the greater long-term gains and prosperity of a society. So with these words, I believe then it's probably a call to both us in the private sector, but also to our leaders in government, is that this is definitely an opportunity for us to seriously reflect and maybe take some painful changes now for us to be able to have a longer term future that is a lot more, maybe going to be a lot more sustainable. We, maybe just to maybe a few words just on Standard Bank, for example. We have been, we have made some big decisions, I think, in the last few years, 2 years or 1 year, which probably goes against where the macroeconomic environment is. The first one was the Honorable Minister referred to the shares that were sold to our employees. I think the Honorable Minister said it's maybe a small shareholding. It is quite significant, 10%, and when it was done, the value of that transaction was 300 million Namibian dollars. So it's a huge structure or transaction. And also the number of people that benefited from that is 1,900, what I would call ordinary Namibians that will never had a chance. So, and that also came with a lot of pain. We needed to go and actually source this funding from IFC. We couldn't get it from here, International Finance Corporation. And it was quite a painful process. The second one is us listing at this point in time. These are, as I said, very extraordinarily uncertain times. The macroeconomic environment is challenged. But if, as an institution, we've been here for 100 years, and we're 100% sure we'll be here for the next 100 years, and 200 years, and 300 years, what we are going through is a cycle in a longer-term growth trajectory that was there the last 100 years. It will be there the next 100 years. But if you look at, a country growth, but you look at it at the trough or the cycle where it is, it might actually be a lot more short term. But if you look at the long term, this is a very good country. It is fruitful, it is peaceful, it has the fundamentals to be a winning nation for many years to come. But what is needed is obviously an opportunity for us to, at this point in time, look at what are those key structural changes we need to introduce in this particular time to be able to make sure that we come out of this cycle as soon as possible. And that's why I think some of the conversations we've been having with investors and potential investors on our listing is, why are you listing now? And the reason is very simple. We are here for the long term, as a business, but also as people as well. And for that reason, what we are going through is only a cycle. And I think with that, also one of the key things that we also want to really get out of this listing is we want to have as many Namibians participate in our financial markets. We already have 1,900 employees that will be participating. When they list, our employees will be shareholders. But we also, we're spending a lot of time explaining why, as a country, we need to have individuals participate in our financial markets, in our stock exchange, directly, not necessarily through institutions. And we are hoping to have as many individual shareholders. And because that's a very critical, fundamental structure for a good economy, is that when you have citizens participate and save through stock exchanges, then over time you will find more funds coming that can then be used for new entrepreneurial businesses being set up, but also for business expansions as well. So I think my summary of what I'm saying is just, we have an opportunity. We should not let a crisis go to waste. With that, we mean when we are in a crisis like this, we need to make difficult decisions in terms of how we are going to make sure that this economy and this country come out of this as soon as possible, but also on a sustainable basis. But what we are going through is only a cycle. If you go back 100 years, 10 years, 20 years, there was always a time like this. And it will be there many years to come. So with those words, thank you once again, Honorable Minister, for always engaging with us, for, I think, the brevity that you showed today without not putting questions out there or being aware what questions you will be asked. This is really a very good evidence and sign of the strong trust that we have between public and the private sectors. Also to PwC, NMH, and Liberty, thank you very much for always putting these platforms for everyone. These are very important in terms of us both understanding the reasons why government is taking certain decisions and also why the spending priorities are the way they are. But at the same time, it also created opportunity for us as citizens and as business leaders to also make our government aware of some of the things or questions we have at the back of our minds. Denver Kesting, thank you very much for, should I say, very difficult questions, but very, very brave, difficult questions. But I really hope that we will always continue with this type of public-private dialogues, questions, discussions. These are extremely important for a prosperous society. Thank you very much. Honorable, I only have one time to ask the Honorable Minister to come forward. Despite the very difficult macroeconomic environment, we'll always have a gift for our Honorable Minister. It has been toned down significantly. So
Thank you very much.
yeah. So it's just a few bell tongs and all that.
At least it's in a transparent bag, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Minister is saying that the bag is transparent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mungunda from Standard Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our formal program. From my end, thank you very much for your attendance here today. Thank you for being a good audience, making my job very easy and staying right till the end of our program. We look forward to continue the dialogue with the business community and the public sector as well. Can we please rise for the singing of the AU and the national anthems?
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise
Thank you. That is the end of this morning's breakfast session.
There you have it, Namibia. That was the midterm budget review breakfast, hosted collaboratively by Namibia Media Holdings, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Standard Bank, and Liberty. We came to you live from the Avani Hotel in the capital. We hope you enjoyed the deliberations. Thank you for tuning in. Please invite your friends to like the Facebook pages of Namibia Media Holdings. Please continue to share it, because this gospel about the country's economy and the health and wealth of our economy is super important. It also brings to an end this live broadcast, but please stay tuned for Klets Kompas, Republicane's breakfast program that will also be hosted live from Havana Hotel a bit later. Thank you very much.